In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a bead breaker. Now, you can break the bead on the tire by driving it over with your car, basically put the board on top of it and driving on it with your car. Or the way I've always done it in the past would be basically with a scissor jack and the chassis of my Silverado, pickup truck basically. But it's always a bit of a hassle that way. And of course you could go out and buy a bead breaker. But this, what I'm going to show you here, works really well and is really easy to make. Not only that, but if you make two of them, you want to make two bead breakers, it makes it a lot easier to reinstall a low profile tire on a rim, like a 50 or a 45 series tire, which is pretty tough to do because you got to keep that one side in the well of the rim, and it's sometimes hard to do that. But with these bead breakers, they also serve to clamp the tire down so it stays in the well when you're installing the tire. So they serve two purposes. But anyway, show you. Here is one that's made up. Here you go. That's all it is. The only modification you need to make to your ratcheting tie down is to install this wooden block, and also is to convert it into a continuous loop tie down. You don't want any hooks, just a strap with no end on it. Now, normally your tie down is going to come with a hook on the tie down and a separate strap. That's no good. You have to reconfigure it. Or you could actually get what they call a continuous loop tie down, which will have no hooks. It will just have this strap. It'll just have a strap attached here, and it will be whatever length the tie down is, and there'll be no hook on the end. But we're gonna convert this one to be like that. Now you could convert just about any ratcheting tie down, but it's easier if you get one that has a bolt. As you can see, this has a bolt, not a rivet. This is not a riveted pin. It's just a bolt with a aircraft nut. But normally most tie downs come like this, and on the end here you have a riveted pin. So you'd have to grind the rivet off and replace it with a bolt if you didn't get the style that had a bolt. So if you have, if you have to go out and buy a tie down, a ratcheting tie down for this purpose, make sure you get one that has a removable bolt if you can. It'll make it easier. And all you need to do, the good thing is, there's no need to permanently modify your ratcheting tie down. All you need to do is remove the bolt. And then, you could cut the hook out again, but you could leave it on. Also, that way, if you ever want to use it as a normal tie down, you still can, but you just put it back together the way it was. But here, we're just going to take the bolt. There's enough room normally to pass both the bolt and the hook through. So just pivot the hook out of the way, put your bolt back in, and feed it through the loop. And there you go. So now I was blocking the view. Let me do that again. Hey, Bugs. This is Bugs. He has to check out everything I'm doing. So now he's blocking the view. Here we go. So I'll do that again. Take it out. Just to make sure you can see what I'm doing. So
you just feed the bolt through that loop, and you can get it so that the bolt, yes, is and the hook, there's enough room to get both in there, normally. Worst case scenario, you cut the hook off, but you shouldn't have to. And let's get that nut back on. And just tighten the bolt back on it. And there you go. So now it's converted to a, as you see, the hook now is just there because it's there for safekeeping. But now we can push this end through, put this end through the other side without any hooks in the way. We basically have converted this standard ratcheting strap to a continuous loop ratcheting strap. Okay. The next thing is you're going to want to cut a piece of oak. And I say oak, it doesn't have to be oak, but you do want it to be some hardwood. Any hardwood will do. I really don't advise using pine. It's too soft. So try, oak is pretty much, it's going to be like the cheapest hardwood you're going to get. So you want to do it in oak. And I'll give you the dimensions right now. If I can find a tape measure or a square, something to measure it with. Meantime, Bugs is there to keep it entertained while I look for it. He's checked it out. Okay, so here we are. Dimensions are, and these dimensions aren't written in stone, it's just that they work well. So 2 by 2. All right, now again, you could probably get away with 2 by 1.5 inches if you can't get 2-inch thick stock. If you can only get standard thickness, you could get away with 1.5 inches wide, I'm sure. But anyway, 2 by 2 is what this is, and then I went 3 1/4 inches long, and then I took the nose of a belt sander and just kind of made this surface here that goes against the rim a bit concave, so you can get it nice and so it conforms to the rim, so you can get really close to the rim. And that helps, because you're breaking the bead, you want to be really close to the rim. And then you want to cut a 45 in it. Here I went 1 inch, so the diagonal measures 1 inch on that 45. So you want to cut a 45 on the back side. And the reason you want that 45 is because when you're pushing down on the tire, the back of the tire is higher, and it tends to kick this forwards and spit it out, and make it go further away from the bead, and that's not what you want. But by having this 45 here, it minimizes that issue. So you want a 45 like that. And that's basically the block you need to make. Then all you need to do is drill a hole in the end of the block, and that hole is going to correspond to on the plate here on the tie down. Normally there's a hole. Almost all of them have a hole or a slot, so you might need a washer if it has a big slot, or if it's got a reasonable size hole, you don't really need a really big washer, just a regular washer, and that will determine where you drill that hole, because you want it to be pretty much set it on that plate. Okay? So you would just set it on the plate and see where the hole is, make your mark, see where the hole in the plate is, and mark that, and then just drill a hole for your pilot. Now, when you're dealing with oak especially, you want a pilot hole, and that pilot hole you want to be the same diameter as the root diameter of the screw that you're using. Because if it's smaller than the root diameter, you're going to wind up splitting the oak, even with a pilot hole. It has to be the root diameter. So anyway, once you have that hole drilled, and you know, worst comes to worst, if you have a ratcheting tie down that had no hole in this backing plate, drill a hole. Not, you know, no big deal. Now I gotta find a screwdriver, which I should have. There it is. Okay, and then simply screw your block onto your get started here. And screw the block onto the backing plate. Now the only reason why you want to screw this block onto it is because if you don't, it gets awkward. You could do it without it. You know, you could just kind of balance the ratcheting mechanism here on top of the block and hold it in place, and it'll work. But that's how I did it the first time when I was developing this. But it's a lot easier if you secure it to it. It makes it a lot easier to work with. So there you go. Now, that's it. That is all it takes. This is a completed bead breaker. Now I'll show you how it works.
Okay, this is a 215, 45, 17 tire. So it's a low profile tire.
Now, the key thing when you're changing any tire is once you've broken the bead to keep the opposite side of the tire in the valley of the rim. By doing so, you increase the clearance on the other side so you can pull the tire over the rim with a minimum amount of stretching. And in the case of a low profile tire, it's not so easy to keep the opposite side of the tire in the valley of the rim because the sidewalls are so short. And that's where this particular bead breaker shines, because it can also be used to hold the opposite side of the tire in the valley of the rim, making it relatively easy to change a low profile tire.
So, obviously the first thing you need to do is remove the valve core. Let me get the tool. Remove the valve core. Try not to lose it. So this particular tire, or rim I should say, this valve is a TPMS valve. So it has a component behind the valve, which is somewhat delicate. So you want to watch out for that. You don't want to damage that. So I'll break the bead on the opposite side. That's where I'll put the bead breaker.
Obviously, it would be better if you had a shorter strap. But since I don't use a bead breaker that frequently, I'm not going to cut it down. I'll just deal with it.
Okay. Just feed this through. Get the bead breaker in position. And ratchet it down. And you want to keep it right against the rim. Now one thing, the key element here makes it a lot easier is to use some kind of tire lube when breaking the bead. It makes a big difference, surprisingly. You know, even on breaking the bead. It's a definite must when installing this low profile tire, because again, you know, it's a 50 series. I'm not a 50, it's smaller than that. This is a 45. So, what I'm gonna do is put a little, this is Meguiar's Tire Shine. Works well, it's pretty slippery. Right there. Hold me like that. I want to at least. Okay, now I just go with a tire iron, hold my aluminum one, and give this a little help. This one might work better because of the hook. I need to go down a little more. As a matter of fact, I'll relocate the camera right to here so you can see better how the bead is going. Okay, you can see that the bead is starting to shift off of the ledge there. So the bead is moving. But it's a really cold day today. It's about just above freezing in my garage, maybe like 34 degrees in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another bead break. So I'll use 2 bead breakers. It just makes it easier. I have another one right here already made up. And I'll feed this through. And ratchet it down. You got to keep that angle so it's angled in towards the bead. Just, oops, don't go too far. Popped off. That's why you want oak, not metal. Won't mess up the rim if you slip. Okay. Keep this square. Okay, I think we are just about there. And I'll give it a little help here. a bit stubborn, but yeah, I think we got it now. Maybe not. Here it goes. Okay, bead's broken. Now that the bead is broken, I can go around, even with my fingers, I can make sure now that it's free everywhere. And like I said, that lube makes a big difference. Now what I want to do is, well, I have it right here. As you can see, these bead breakers are holding, move that closer, the tire below that shelf and in the valley. And that's important because as you can see, without those, it's kind of hard to hold this down so it's below. You know, if you bend on, there's not like you, if you go, normally you would like, when you're changing by hand, you would like push down with your knees. But because the sidewall is so thin, you really don't get to hold it in place with your knees. You'd have to hold down with your hands, and you only got so many hands while you're working the other place. So these act as a third and fourth hand to hold the tire below the bead, below the shelf. It's important that the tire is below the shelf so that it has more room to go this way when you're pulling the tire over the rim. So put this in there. Watching out for that. I don't want to get too close to that stem. And just pry the tire up and over the rim. And then, see if I can get this in there. Okay. And the lube, again, is very helpful in pulling the tire off the rim. And what I've noticed is that there's no, normally on most tires I would break both beads first before removing the tire from the rim. But in this case, on this 45 profile tire, this low profile tire, 45 series, you're better off leaving the bead on the back of the tire. So now, I'm just gonna pry the tire up over the rim. And we are just about there. I'll get it. One more. Hook in there ought to do it. There we go. So now I can release these bead breakers. And remove them entirely. So the tire stubborn. Here we go. Tire is off, pretty much off the rim. Just work it the rest of the way. And as you see, I was careful that I watched out for that valve, so I never got too close to it. Okay, tires off the rim on this side. Now, an advantage to this is that a secondary advantage is that by pulling the bead off the front of the tire first, without breaking the bead on the back, when you flip the tire on its face, the tire itself protects the face of the rim. So there's a slight advantage there.
So at this point, I'll use the bead breakers again on this side of the tire, just like I did on the other side of the tire, to break the bead. Then I'll pry and pull the entire tire off the front side of the rim. Then I'll install the new tire using the bead breakers to keep the opposite side of the tire in the valley of the rim. Basically, the process for installing the new tire is the same as the process for removing the old tire, just in reverse, with the very last step being to seat the bead rather than break the bead. If you'd like to see a fully detailed step-by-step video where I take you through the complete process of removing, installing, and even balancing a low-profile tire by hand, let me know in the comments, or even better yet, subscribe, and I'll make the video.